students, welcome back to this 11th module of the GST 2020 series. In this GST 2020 series, we'll cover the entire portion for the November 2020 exam for CA Inter related to GST in 20 modules of just 20 minutes each. So within 400 minutes, we'll cover the entire GST as well as the revision of it. Today, we'll take a very important topic, which is ITC, that is Input Tax Credit. No matter what you do in your life, whether you do your practice or you get into a business or into a job, this particular topic will be a very much important all throughout your life. So students, pay utmost attention to this topic. This topic ITC is a very large topic. So we have split this into two modules. Module number 11, which is this module, and module number 12, which will be the next module. So in both the things, we are going to cover input tax credit. Our method of teaching is little different. Apart from this video, you will also see animation, infographics, and case studies. So let's begin. These are the topics that we are going to cover in this module. The first being some important definition. Then we look into the eligibility and conditions of availing ITC as per section 16. Then we will look at rule 36 and 37, which lays down some very important rules for the purpose of claiming ITC. Next, we'll look at section 17. Section 17 is also a very large section. So a portion of section 17 we'll cover in this module and the rest we'll cover in the next module. So along with a part of section 17, we'll also look at rule 42 and 43, which talks about reversal of ITC in certain cases. So let's start with some important definition. So we are going to cover three definitions, and all of these three are closely linked to each other, which is the capital goods subsection 19 of section 2, input subsection 59 of section 2, input services subsection 60 of section 2. There are common things which are here, so we have put them together to make it very easy to understand for the students. Anything that a person is buying, either capital goods or normal inputs or input services, they can claim ITC only and only if those are intended to be used for his business, either for the day-to-day use or for the growth of his business. If this business use is not satisfied, a person cannot claim ITC. Now, apart from this basic condition, some additional conditions has to be satisfied for each of these items. So we look into one by one. If the basic conditions are satisfied and it is in relation to goods and they are capitalized in books of accounts, then they are called capital goods. So there is no other definition of capital goods. It doesn't talk about plant, machinery, building, anything. All it says is if the assessee chooses to capitalize any goods in his books of accounts as per the accounting norms, then it is assumed as capital goods for GST purpose as well. Any input other than which are not capitalized in books of accounts will become inputs. Finally, any business service will become input services. So in nutshell, if you see, this is the definition of capital goods, input and input services. It is very important to note that services cannot be capitalized as per GST. Only those goods which are capitalized in books of accounts will become capital goods. There may be services which may in relation to any capital goods. For the purpose of GST, they have to be taken as just normal input services and cannot be treated as capital goods. So students, moving ahead, now we'll take the most important aspect of ITC, which is determining the eligibility of claiming ITC under section 16. This will break down into three parts. So let's look into it, the first part. So the first talks about the eligibility of claiming the ITC. To be eligible, an assessee should first be a registered person in GST. Second, there should have been an actual supply of goods or services. Third, it should be for a business purpose or furtherance of business. And finally, there should be the credit available in the credit ledger of the assessee. Only then, only when all these four conditions are satisfied, is the assessee eligible to claim ITC. Next, we will see what are the conditions that are to be mandatorily completed for a person to claim ITC. Number one, an invoice should have been issued and received by the receiver of supply so that he can claim ITC based on that document. Number two, there should be an actual receipt of the goods or the services should have been rendered to the receiver. There are few other cases which we need to understand in detail. Number one, there may be situations where there is a transferring title of goods. This is allowed as per section 7 and the schedules given to the CGST Act. Transfer of title of goods is also part of supply, and hence if there is only a transfer of title of goods, it will still be deemed to be receipt of the goods. Second, there may be situation where goods are received in multiple lots. So day 1 they will receive the first lot, day 2 they will receive the second lot, and so on. But ITC can be claimed only when the final lot or all the goods have been received. Third situation is where the goods are received by an agent or a job worker or a third party in the direction of the receiver. This is also allowed as per GST, and hence if the agent or a job worker or any third party, they receive the goods, finally services also can be rendered to a third party in the direction of the receiver. Again, in those situations also, it will be assumed that the services have been rendered and the person can claim ITC. The third and the most vital condition is that the tax should be paid by the supplier. This has been a very big problem throughout India from the time GST has come. This has created a lot of problem to honest taxpayers, but this is a very important condition to claim ITC. The supplier should have paid the tax and the receiver should have checked whether the supplier has paid the tax or not. Finally, the person who is claiming the tax should also file the return, which is a very obvious condition. Now, apart from this, there are a few other points also to be considered. Let's look into them. Number 1, consideration of the supply. That is, today a person buys goods worth ₹1 lakh with 18,000 GST. Now, he is claiming ITC immediately on the month of the receipt of the goods, which is a very normal situation. Now, that person gets 180 days to make the payment to his supplier. Now, if he does not make payment within 180 days, the 18,000 credit that he has already taken, he has to reverse after the end of that 180th day. There also may be a situation where part payment is made. Then, to the extent of payment not made, the proportionate reduction in ITC is required. Okay, there may be situation that after this 180 days, payment would have been made, say after 200th day or 250th day. If payment is made, then the ITC which was reversed can be reclaimed. Next, there are capital goods which also can be purchased by the person and they are also eligible for claiming ITC. However, for the GST portion, a person cannot claim depreciation under Income Tax Act as well as ITC in GST Act. He cannot claim both the benefit. He has to choose. If he is claiming depreciation on the GST portion, then he cannot claim ITC under the GST Act. Say for example, a person buys a machinery worth 10 lakh rupees. The GST on that says 18%, that is 1,80,000. Now the person has a choice. Either he can capitalize the 10 lakhs and the 1,80,000, that is 11,80,000, and claim depreciation on the 11,80,000. Or second option, he can capitalize only the cost of the machine, which is 10 lakhs, and claim depreciation under income tax on 10 lakhs. On the 1,80,000, he can claim ITC under GST Act. However, in normal situation, claiming ITC is much more beneficial to the assessee. However, there may be different situation based on the circumstances of each assessee. The law gives the option to the assessee to decide what is best based on his situation. Next crucial point, there may be situations where due to some genuine reason, ITC may not be claimed in the same month of purchasing that particular product or a service. In those cases, the person can claim ITC for what is left out till the end of the September of the subsequent financial year or filing of annual return, whichever is earlier. Let me give you an example. A person buys goods worth 1 lakh on 1st of April 2019. Okay, and the ITC portion on that is 18,000. However, due to some reason, they miss out in claiming this 18,000 ITC. They have time till end of 6 months to financial year, which is, or if it is 1st of April 2019, they have time till 30th of September 2020 to claim this missed portion of ITC of 18,000. Or if they have filed the annual return for financial 1920 before 30th September, then that would be the last day. So this way, some of the interest of the assessee is also protected by the GST Act. So friends, in nutshell, this is all the provisions of section 16, which gives the eligibility, condition and some additional points for the purpose of claiming ITC. This will be very, very important from the point of view of examination, and I would request students to take a very important note on this. Moving ahead, let's look into Rule 36 and Rule 37, which gives some additional conditions for claiming ITC. So Rule 36 says that what are the documents which are required for claiming ITC? Well, we already discussed that documentation is an important aspect, otherwise a person cannot claim ITC. So the list of documents are given in Rule 36. It says that it can be either a tax invoice, a bill of entry in case of import, a debit note if there is any sales return, purchase return, or any adjustment towards price, ISD invoices when there is a transfer of goods from one GST number to another GST number of the same person, then an ISD invoice can be used for the purpose of claiming ITC, or any other similar set of documents that we have enumerated above can also be used for claiming an ITC. Now, apart from this, there are few other conditions. The first one is all the conditions which are laid down under section 16 to section 21 should be fulfilled. Even if one condition is not fulfilled, the person cannot claim ITC. The next is a GSTR2 return should have been filed. However, right now this is not mandatory, and hence this point is at the moment only theoretical in nature. Finally, there may be some situation where not all the information is provided in the documents that we talked about. However, they've given a small list of basic information which should be provided mandatorily, like the name of the assessee, GST number, taxable value, what tax it is, the amount of tax, and so on. If some basic information is provided, then it's also sufficient enough for claiming ITC. If a person is claiming ITC which is subject to any fraud, willful misstatement, or suppression of facts, then he will not be eligible to claim ITC. So, if a person is not following the law properly or violating or willfully doing any tax evasion, then ITC cannot be claimed. Next, we'll look into Rule 37. We already discussed that if a person does not pay his supplier within 180 days, he has to reverse the ITC. Rule 37 talks about how this has to be done. Number one, a person first can claim ITC as soon as he received the goods or services and other conditions as per section 16 are fulfilled. But if he is not paying the vendor within 180 days, then he has to reverse the tax that he has claimed along with the interest portion. After the completion of the 180 days, the ITC that he has claimed will be added to the output tax liability. Now, this is a very important point. It will not be reversed from the ITC, but will be added as an output tax liability in the month where that 180 days is over. Now, apart from paying the tax, the person is also required to pay the interest portion because he has availed the ITC incorrectly. So, the interest has to be paid from the date of availing the ITC to the date of payment of this tax. However, if the assessee pays his supplier after 180 days, then after making the payment to his supplier, he can reclaim the ITC credit which he had reversed. This is one good part of the GST. And here another part is the time limit that we specified, that is end of 6 months from the financial year or filing of annual return, whichever is earlier, will not apply for this particular clause of reclaiming ITC for non-payment to the supplier. Next, friends, we will take a very important aspect in ITC, which is section 17. This is a very big section and it has to be understood in detail. So, we will take one portion of this in this module, which is module 11, and the next portion will be taken in module 12, so that you can understand this very easily. So, first we will talk about subsection 1 of section 17, which is on goods or services which are used partly for business and partly for other purposes. So, where goods or services are both or used partly for the purpose of business and partly for other purposes, then ITC can be claimed only to the extent of business purpose. For example, A Limited purchases 3 air conditioners, out of which one is used for the residence of the director for personal purpose. Can ITC be claimed for the 3 ACs? Well, answer is out of the 3 air conditioners, one is used for the residence of the director and hence not a business purpose. Therefore, ITC can be availed only on the 2 air conditioners which are used in the office. Next, we will look at subsection 2 and subsection 3 of section 17, which talks about partly taxable and partly exempt. That is, where there are inputs which are used partly for effecting taxable supplies and partly for effecting exempt supply, then amount of ITC credit available will be the input tax as attributable to the taxable supply. So taxable supplies are which include zero rated supplies. That is, zero rated means supply to SEZ or export. And exempt supplies include supplies which are nil rated, exempt or even non-taxable. Let's take an example. B Limited is a bakery and has the following sales. Bread rupees 1 lakh, which is at nil rate of tax. Cakes and pastries rupees 5 lakh, which is taxable at 18%. Sale of snacks item to an SEZ unit for rupees 2 lakh. Now there are common ITC of rupees 4 lakh. How to calculate eligible ITC credit? Well, in this example, sale to SEZ unit is zero rated supply, hence part of taxable supply. Exempt supply includes nil rate of tax, that is tax at zero rate. That was the bread of rupees 1 lakh. So taxable supplies would be taxable supplies plus zero rated supplies, which is 7 lakhs. Eligible ITC is common ITC divided by total turnover into taxable turnover. Therefore, it is 4 lakh divided by 8 lakh into 7 lakh, which is 3 lakh and 50,000 is the eligible ITC that B Limited can avail. Next, we look into subsection 4 of section 17. In case of banks or NBFCs, where there is interest income which is exempt, as well as there is other income which is taxable, they have been given two options. Option number 1, either take proportionate ITC based on exempt turnover and taxable turnover, the one that we have seen in the earlier example, or second option is take 50% of the eligible ITC. However, this restriction of 50% shall not apply to the tax paid on supplies made by one registered person to another registered person with the same time. That is, from one branch of the bank to another branch of the bank. Friends, with this we come to the conclusion of the 11th module. See you soon in the 12th module. Till then, all the best. Prepare well for your exams.